Good morning, Bucknutters. It is Thursday, September 8th, 2022. I am Dan Rubin. This is the Bucknuts Morning 5 and Change. Those of you on Facebook, Twitter, and YouTube, I have to admit, I'm not sure you're on YouTube. We are doing some technical updates to our YouTube page, so there's a chance this will be a limited YouTube crowd. But you can see the beautiful faces of Bill Kurelic and Mark Porter. Gentlemen, how goes it?
Going well this morning.
Bill, you tried to get a comment in there right as we started the show. I hope it wasn't anything super relevant because, as you know, I'm not able to juggle that many topics at once. One topic I will to go ahead.
I said nope, not go right on.
Yeah, like I've always said, I think everyone who has a radio show is obligated to tell you that the chatter we have before the show and after the show is better than the show, but that's being played on C-SPAN for premium users, so see if you can get that. However, let's start by looking back. You notice the red surrounding Bucknuts here. There was a red carpet to rival all red carpets this past weekend. It was a star-studded affair as Ohio State beat Notre Dame in the shoe, the marquee of the weekend, really in sports, if you judge it by the clientele that was there. I think the dream team would be struggling if they didn't get to use guys who were at that game. It was very impressive. Bill, you covered it as well as it could be covered. There was a ton of dudes there. Why not tell us two or three guys you think this really had an impact on?
Well, that's kind of hard because it had a huge impact on so many. But, I would probably, if I had to limit it to just a few, Ian Moore would be one of them, certainly the offensive lineman from New Palestine, Indiana. He was at Ohio State's camp in June. Mark and I saw him there, and I liked him a lot. I think Mark did too. He's an excellent prospect that Ohio State is recruiting for any of the five offensive line positions. And I had an interview with him right away on Sunday morning, and I really like where Ohio State stands with him. Another one that I think that they certainly impressed was Demarion Witten, and Mark and I, of course, have seen him. He's a Cleveland Glenville guy, and he got offered by Ohio State just a couple days ago, like where Ohio State stands with him. And there's a number of them. Of course, we got to talk about the big three: Mateo, of course, Keon Keeley, and Damon Wilson, and all three of them had a great time at Ohio State on Saturday. As I wrote on Sunday night in my column, going into the weekend, I thought that Ohio State would be very happy with getting one of those three. Outside chance of two, no way three. Coming out of the weekend, I think that they will very likely get at least one of them. I would not at all put past them getting two of them. So I think they helped their chances with those three as well.
Ian Moore, by the way, was crystal balled by Steve Wiltfong. He is an Indiana native. Both of those guys are, by the way, Ian Moore and Steve Wiltfong. So that may carry a little bit more juice. Mark, tell us about Demarion Witten. We know about Arvell Reese. We know about Bryce West. I believe, is it Freddie Johnson is the next guy after that? We hadn't heard as much about Demarion Witten. I said to Bill before the show, I am always in favor of offering tight ends with the last name Witten. I think it bodes well for his future. Tell us about who Demarion Witten is, what type of prospect he is, and then if you feel like he's got a vibe.
Yeah, I guess the vibe on him is when I saw him over the summer and other times, he really doesn't look like a tight end yet, your traditional bulky blocking tight end. He looks very athletic. So I think the vibe on him before is let's figure out what he's going to be in college. And I still am not sure where he exactly ends up because I think he's athlete. He's a guy that runs really well. He has the size. He has the athletic profile. On defense, he could do a number of different positions over there. So I think he's one of those guys you take and see where it goes. But I think what they like on him is what they're seeing on film, the explosiveness, the athleticness. And of course, we're going to break him down this week and give the Bucknutters a little more of an insight of what we're actually talking about here. But versatility is probably the word I'd put with Witten when it comes to tight end right now.
Yeah, it used to be the athlete was more of a scat back type. If you look now, the athlete tends to be almost defense, that tight end / outside linebacker size guy. They can't really figure out where they want to put him yet. Maybe because the high school, college, and pro game, that player kind of varies in terms of where they can be effective. But always good to get another Glenville guy in the mix.
A college coach talked to me one time, and he said, we'll take as many 6'4", 6'5" guys that can run as possible.
Yeah.
We'll just take them all because there's not that many in existence. So that tight end body, that 6'5", 6'4" guy that flies around, there's not many of them. In Ohio, you only have about 5 scholarship tight ends a year, maybe a few more in some years, and a lot of them aren't this high echelon type talent. So that's really what you're buying is that rare body type. And we could go on defense and name way more guys that are 6'5", 210, and 220 that we've taken, and you're not sure if they're outside linebacker, defensive end, and you just let it work out on the campus.
And speaking of, Mark talked about Witten's versatility. I saw Glenville play Olentangy Liberty a few weeks ago in what turned out to be a surprisingly close game. It got really interesting at the end. Glenville, I think, set the world record for penalties that night. Some of them legit, some of them might have been a little home cooking, to be honest. And in fact, one play on the sideline they called Glenville for a pass interference was right in front of me, and even an Olentangy person was standing next to me said that was not interference, and it was kind of a phantom call, but that does happen. Glenville overcame. And speaking to Witten's versatility, that night he played a lot of tight end, and he did, that's some nice combination blocks, by the way, with Fred Johnson, who Mark has talked about, the offensive tackle. Witten also split out a wide receiver at times. When the game started to get tight at the end, and it did get tight, he went in on defense and played there and played a couple different spots. Yeah, he is very versatile. He's 6'4", 215. And when I first walked in, physically, 3 guys stood out to me physically when I first walked in. Arvell Reese, obviously, he just looks big. He looks tall. He looks long. So does Witten. And then Fred Johnson is huge. The other guy, of course, is Bryce West. He doesn't stand out physically because he's 5'11" and about 180 pounds, but he's tremendous.
There were some other incredible, let's put a bow on the weekend. One of them there was a picture taken of Brian Hartline, some current recruits, the Brandon Ennis and Bryson Rogers of the world, and then the Curtis Samuel, Terry McLaurin, and Jeremiah Smith was in that picture. The Florida, Andrew Ivins has long said he'd been crystal balled. Steve Wilfong put one in. You actually put the crystal ball in a long time ago. I have to assume, and we're kind of just rolling in the mud here and just enjoying our greatness, but nothing changed with Jeremiah Smith. And by the way, if you look at that picture with all the other dudes, he might be the biggest one in there.
No, I did crystal ball Jeremiah Smith a long time ago. I don't know, maybe 7 months ago, I'm guessing, just right off the top of my head. I continue to like where Ohio State stands. And you speak about nothing has changed, Dan. At one time, he seemed really, really close to going ahead and making his decision early. And that decision, I was convinced, was going to be Ohio State. And then he kind of backed off, wanted to go through the process. And that's kind of where it stands now still. It's looking more and more like he's going to continue to go through the process. But when that process is over, I continue to like Ohio State a lot.
Yeah, another guy in that picture, JoJo Trader, Floridian, who is close to Jeremiah Smith. He's on his 3rd high school, so I get a little nervous about doing that, but Ohio State is in it to win it with him. We will take a quick break here and come back and talk about the great state of Ohio. And we are back. Both of you guys are going to be down my way a little bit this weekend, and we will get to that. But, Bill, before I get away from last weekend, I want to ask you this one general question. There was a tremendous amount of angst coming out of the big visit weekend a while back. They did not get the defensive players they wanted out of it. Now, this weekend was compared to that, and it seemed like it went much better. Would you agree the vibe coming out in general now much better?
Oh, it was absolutely huge help to Ohio State's defensive recruiting, what happened in Ohio Stadium on Saturday night. The defense was tremendously impressive, and kids want to see what they're getting into, and I don't blame them. It was going to be hard getting some of those kids in June to go to Ohio State that were great defensive players, not knowing what exactly they were getting into. A lot of kids saw what they're getting into now at Ohio State, and they came away very impressed. I heard so many kids comment, so many recruits comment that they were so impressed with Jim Knowles' defense. It was dominating. Would they allow them 70 yards, something like that in the second half and no points? And that was after a pretty darn good first half too, for that matter. So the attacking aggressive style really appealed to recruits. It was absolutely huge. And I think that you're going to eventually see that. You're going to see a number of the defensive players that were in Ohio Stadium on Saturday eventually become Buckeyes.
Mark, you had a tremendous breakdown of the game. We always do a Buckeye and the Sky from the weekend. School gridiron action. We also do one where you get under the hood and tell us what happened in the Ohio State game. Let's piggyback on the Jim Knowles commentary. You were forced to watch a lot of the games last year on tape, i.e. the Oregon and Michigan games. Give us a sense of what you saw schematically different. The term I used, and I was going to use today, that jumped out to me, fortunately or unfortunately, was a term Ryan Day used yesterday at his press conference. It was decisiveness. When you see athletes play like that, it's fantastic. And I'll tell you one thing I look at, and this is going to sound a little bit oversimplified, but if your team kicks the ball off to start a game, I want it to look like there are 35 guys on kickoff. I think that's emblematic of a team that's ready to get after it. It's emblematic of a team that has athletes they can put on special teams. So Chip Trayanum's hit to start the game, to me, was sort of a mark of what was to come. But if you could give us some detail on the Knowles upgrade, that would be wonderful.
It's night and day from last year. Literally the first play of defense, corner blitz. I mean, not vanilla. I mean, total rotation, where last year when we broke down the Oregon game, we're 40, 50 plays into the game and we're still in a vanilla defense, and Oregon's just hammering away on our base vanilla looks. So there was no base vanilla looks. We put some plays together on the tape where they start off in cover two, they roll to a different version of cover two, and then they end up in cover three. So the way they clouded the coverages on every play, you never see what you're getting. And then they set the players loose. They set athletes loose to go play fast, go play fun. Where I think when they were in the defense last year, the linebackers were back at 5 or 6 yards reading and kind of waiting instead of attacking, where this Knowles style of defense, there was guys, we were cover zero, all out man-to-man blitz, no safeties over the top. He mixed in looks that we haven't seen traditionally over the past couple of years. I can't remember ever seeing no safeties over the top, couple zero. So throughout that game, as we broke it down, yeah, we got vanilla looks out of Knowles, but we also got more of an attacking style mixed in there than I think we've ever seen. And like you said, when you have players that want to come somewhere and play and have fun, when they see that type of a defense where if you're a linebacker, you have a chance to go make plays in the backfield. You're not just standing in coverage. Having coached myself, kids don't like to play base defense. They like to do fun things. They like the corner blitz. So I think Knowles kind of showed off his fun side, but it's also his intelligent side of how do you scheme those type of things in and make them useful and not just be fun and get beat by blitzing and inopportune times. So we saw a lot out of that defense, and I have a feeling I have my work cut out for me each week with that defense because it is complex and you have to pause it and slow it down and actually look at these guys and try to figure out what they're in.
I feel sorry for you to have to do more work, but I feel good for me that you're doing that because it was hard to watch the defense last year, honestly.
And
the good thing is, go ahead.
I want to get back to the real quick what you asked me before. last week we talked about the point spread, 17 points, and you asked us about that. And I said I thought it was too many points. That it was going to be closer than that. As it turns out, it was closer to me in a good way. And I talked about this in my column on Sunday. Had they won that game, 48-10, that'd have been great. But had they won it 48-38, people would have been saying it's all the same thing. We're going to have to outscore teams, and the defense. Winning it 21-10 was tremendous for Ohio State, because that offense is going to be good. They're going to score points, but they showed they're going to be a very good defensive team, and that was really, really important. So I think they won that game in a very good way that bodes well for Ohio State's future this season.
I just don't think there are many programs. If you look at who played for Ohio State in the Rose Bowl and who's expected to come back, they didn't have their top 5 wide receivers or top 4 receivers on the tight end from last year. The idea that you could go then beat a top 5 team is a sign of depth. So very impressive.
But my comments last week where I thought the offense for Ohio State was going to be the experienced group where they were going to come in and do it. And then as soon as we lose our top receiver, I'm thinking, well, there goes my prediction of my experience and having something in there where you can go to where, it took a few minutes to retool and get a new number 1 into that spot and rotate guys around, but they figured it out. And it's nice to have Hunt or Milan.
No doubt. And, one thing that's really, really encouraging, we talked about having to see the defense, and that was a huge question. I don't think anyone, like I've said, if you look at our page views, anytime we put the name Knowles in a headline, everybody reads it now because he was, supposed to be the Messiah and so good. One thing I think we really need to talk about that was positive. Notre Dame's defensive line is veteran quality, has at least one first-round pick on there. Their ability to run the ball down their throat at the end of the game, knew it was coming, is a very big deal. Ohio State's not going to play a defensive line as that the rest of the season, at least on paper. And they knew we weren't passing the ball very well. And the idea of those 2 long drives right down their throat, very, very impressive. All right?
Yeah. Let's talk about that for 1 second. That zone scheme that Ohio State runs, they don't run gap blocking. They don't run block down and kick out. It's all zone. What zone is you're going to reach the guy across from you, which is the hardest block in the history of football to make, to get the outside shoulder of a guy who doesn't want you to get the outside shoulder. Well, when Ohio State asserts their will against a defensive line like Notre Dame, and when you zone a defense, you essentially break their will. And so I like how you guys are bringing this up that, under pressure at the end of the game, this offensive line just manned up and almost like cavemen just walked these guys off the ball from Notre Dame and created holes and created downhill running lanes. So really, hats off to them. But if you're doing that in a zone scheme, you are absolutely at the top of the mountain conquering a defensive line, in my opinion, because it's the hardest block to execute.
And think about Paris Johnson. After the spring game, people were wondering, is Paris Johnson going to be able to do it at left tackle? He didn't have a great spring game. Paris Johnson played really well. He was going against a guy that is going to be probably maybe a first-round pick, no worse than a second-round pick in the NFL draft. And you didn't hear that guy's name much after the first series. So Paris Johnson played extremely well, I thought.
Yeah, his name is Isaiah Foskey. You read the Boarding House yesterday. We had some comments from him in there. I'll tell you this, NFL draft nerd. After the first weekend, let's call this week 1. I don't know if you understand week 0, but week 1, the 2 guys I think that in the NFL has gotten really a lot of love on were Paris Johnson moving up a tackle and the quarterback at Florida, Anthony Richardson. So both those guys are prototypes. Guys who can go in the top 5 that have no discernible weakness. It's a beauty in the eye of the beholder. Mark from Chris Glover, what is the strength of the class of 2024 in Ohio? And then Bill, Damon Wilson, chess piece or hand in the dirt player? Mark?
You know what? Ohio is never known for their defensive backs. We don't have a lot of schools that are playing man-to-man press coverage. We have a lot of schools in Ohio that play zone. In fact, I'd say 80-90% of the teams I scout are playing zone. So Aaron Scott, Bryce West, having 2 corners at the top of the class, that could be considered a strength. We haven't offered an offensive lineman in Ohio, Ben Roebuck or Luke Hamilton in 2024. An offensive line is usually a strength. So those offers may be coming, but Ohio State, just like myself, felt that, wow, that is an extremely good defensive back class with Aaron Scott and Bryce West, two guys that are going to be nationally recruited, of course. And throw on Treon Nichols from down at Withrow. He just picked up Penn State. He has Notre Dame. He has the 40 times we kind of put him in that week one wrap-up of guys we covered. So the defensive back class is getting a little early notoriety for the class of 2024. And as this class develops, that may change. It might be fluent or up and down. But, yeah, 2 DBs in Ohio. Hats off to Ohio for that. We haven't seen that in a while.
Bill, Damon Wilson?
They're recruiting him as a defensive end, but as we've talked about, Jim Knowles is innovative. He's going to move guys around. He's going to fit guys in. So while they're recruiting him as a defensive end, right now he's about 6'4", 230, and I think he could be moved around. But right now, I think they see his growth potential, and he's a defensive end with the ability, I would say, to eventually perhaps move around some.
We're not going to have a ton on the Arkansas State game here on the show today. On Saturday noon, Ohio State plays Arkansas State at the Shoe. If it's an issue, there'll be so much more to talk about than recruiting. If you like young players and if you like looking at your program midway through the third quarter to see who's out there, this is the game for you. Speaking of games for you, you guys will both be down passing the Gem City on your way to your Friday night destination. Bill first, then Mark, where will you be and why?
Well, unless things change in the next 24 hours, my plan is to head to Lakota West, see Lakota West play Cincinnati Oak Hills. A little bit hard finding Lakota West games to go to because they are really good. If you look at their schedule, they don't play, unfortunately for them, a lot of teams that are going to be able to match up with them. Cincinnati Oak Hills is 2-1, but still, I think Lakota West is going to be expected to dominate that game. But I'll be there predominantly to see Ohio State commitment Malik Hartford, who is a tremendous, I think, safety prospect. But Lakota West has got a lot of good players. So I'll be looking at some of the younger kids as well.
Yeah, I'm jealous. Bill gets to see Lakota West because that is going to be a loaded game. I'm going to go to Lakota East, and you've seen their scores. They've struggled a little bit early on. So I'm going to go check them the first half versus Middletown, and hopefully I get a good first half there where Austin Sierraveld's putting on a show. And then I'm going to go over and see Princeton and Hamilton, two schools that I always check out over there. And it matches up really well where during halftime I can get from one game to the other pretty quickly and see 4 quality teams over there in Southwest Ohio that are Division I players and usually perennial powers. And every one of them has a prospect I'm interested. Maybe not all Ohio State guys, but all of them, especially Princeton, they've been putting out players left and right lately. So I'll be interested to see what they have.
The aforementioned Paris Johnson among them. We will have Buckeye in the Sky from the Ohio Gridiron on Monday morning. We appreciate our guys stopping by. You have a good one, Bucknutters.